Greetings. Greetings. This is Doc Ock coming to you live from Black Facts Headquarters Central here in Kent, Ohio, with another exclusive bedtime story. One of Doc Ock's favorite stories about the man who made a library. The man who made a library. They called him Arturo Schomburg, not Arturo Sandoval, it's a different person. Arturo Schomburg. He was Puerto Ricano, so he came from Puerto Rico, and he came to the United States with very little money, but a love of learning and a love of books. He was what we call a bibliophile. That's somebody who loves books. And I actually was able to go to his library. Here's a nice drawing of the library. It was one of those New York City brownstones, as you can see here. It's like a house or an apartment condo. It's like a condo. A brownstone back in those days, but we call condos today. They call brownstones back then. So it's a house, but it's 2 floors, usually single family, would be living primarily in that one dwelling. Okay, typical New York City. And he was from Puerto Rico and he was Black. And so he says the American Negro must remake his past in order to make his future. History must restore what slavery took away. So we're going to read a little prologue here, a little snippet, a summary of his life and the importance of his life. Arturo Schomburg was more than a book lover, more than a mailroom clerk at Bankers Trust, where he supervised 11 white men. Unheard of authority for a Black man at that time. He recognized early on that history was not history unless it was complete from all angles. Kind of like this video, got to have it complete from every angle. Like a detective, he hunted for clues and found facts, affirming the role of African descendants in building nations and shaping cultures. Fellow book collector Arthur Schomburg noted that Arturo would approach an immense pile of apparently worthless material and unerringly find 1 or 2 treasures, which would have been lost to a less inspired collector. Arturo believed that those facts, once unearthed, would speak loud and clear in halls of knowledge, daring another teacher to tell a Black child that the Negro has no history. Time and again, through print, music, and art, Schomburg proved otherwise. On his lifelong quest, he was not just collecting rarities. He was correcting history for generations to come. He wanted the facts to reach the community and boys and girls in classrooms to teach them that Black heritage knows no national boundaries. And today, the Harlem Library, bearing Schomburg's name, boasts more than 10 million items, a beacon for scholars from all over the world, bringing to light past glories that Arturo always knew existed. So we're going to just kind of go through here. This talks about his schooling and his upbringing from the 5th grade on. We'll read a few more pages and then we'll point out some of the highlights of the book. We won't have time within our time frame to read the whole book, but some of the important people in his life were the tabaqueros, and tabaqueros are the people that made cigars. Very important product is the tobacco from out of Puerto Rico, Cuba, as well as the United States back in the early days. Well, before cigarettes got banned like they are now, it was an extremely important product. Our whole monetary system is based on tobacco and hogs heads of tobacco. So in the 5th grade, Arturo Schomburg was born with a sense of wonder. As a boy in Puerto Rico, he shadowed tabaqueros, or otherwise known as cigar workers. These men pooled money to pay el lector to read aloud in the factory. So you have to keep in mind, a lot of these people in the factory may not have been able to read and write, but they could understand if you talk to them. So they had somebody else who could read. They had one person who could read and write come in and sit high up on a chair and read to everybody else while they did their work. So he would read newspapers, novels, speeches, and politics. Arturo took in the scent of cured tobacco and the sound of the reader's voice. Thus, Arturo not only learned his ABCs, but also to love the written word. So when his fifth grade teacher told him that Africa's sons and daughters had no history, no heroes worth noting, did the twinkle leave Arturo's eyes? I don't think so. Did he slouch his shoulders, hang his head low, and look to the ground rather than to the horizon? No, his people must have contributed something. Over the centuries, history that teachers did not teach. Until they did, school children like Arturo would not learn of their own heritage, ignorance shackling them like chains. After that teacher dismissed his people's past, did the twinkle leave Arturo's eyes? Did a candle blown out like a candle blown out in the dark? No, the twinkle never left. In fact, it grew into a spark, and that spark grew into a flame, and that flame became a raging inferno. Because today, his library takes up the whole corner on 131st and I think 135th and Malcolm X Boulevard. I think it's right in that neighborhood because I remember because my uncle lived across the street. I used to go over there all the time. Genius, where is our historian to give us our side? Arturo asked, to teach our people our own history. Afro-Puerto Ricanos, he was an Afro-Puerto Ricano, born in 1874. Young Arturo Schomburg began a lifelong quest. Still a boy, he took on the mantle of historian because he had to know the truth. In a history club, he noticed the white youth seemed prouder of their heritage than the black members. Arturo read everything he could about his people, but he did not hurry. He let facts simmer. True scholarship requires time and calm effort, he figured. Nothing worthwhile is done in haste. After all, there were ages to traverse. Lost for hours in books, Arturo was transported by Benjamin Banneker's almanac to early America. Arturo studied all he could about this self-taught inventor, astronomer, draftsman. He beamed as he read that Banneker accurately plotted a solar eclipse. Arturo could almost hear the tick-tock of Banneker's handcrafted clock. Tick-tock, the first built in the New World. Tick-tock. Arturo imagined Banneker counting off minutes. Tick-tock, racing time to redraft plans from memory. Tick-tock for the streets of Washington, D.C. Tick-tock after French architect Pierre L'Enfant walked off the job. Tick-tock and carted his papers with him back to Europe. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Banneker reproduced them in only 2 days. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The nation's capital in 2 days by heart. Tick-tock, tick-tock. That's how you do it, and that's when you know you got a lock on a brilliant mind of the very right kind. Where were the monuments to this genius? Where were the monuments? El Inmigrante. When 17-year-old Arturo Schomburg immigrated to New York from Puerto Rico in 1891, he carried with him letters of introduction from cigar makers and from Jose Gonzalez Font, who owned a printing press in San Juan, where Arturo had worked as a typographer. Arturo presented the letters to Flor Baerga, an amateur book collector and staunch opponent of Spanish colonial rule. Arturo perused Baerga's photos and clippings about New York's Puerto Ricano community and soon found the local tabaqueros. This time he lived among them, sharing their activism and their allegiance to Cuban and Puerto Rican independence from Spain in support of La Causa, the cause. Arturo joined political groups such as Los Dos Antillas, or the Two Antilles, and wrote letters to the editor of the newspaper Patria under the pen name Guarone. Newly arrived, Arturo sought to better himself, giving Spanish lessons while learning English. In night school, Drawn to medicine and law, he pursued neither because, as the story goes, his official school records were lost in a fire. Not even a letter from a former teacher was sufficient proof of his formal education. Kindergarten was all that could be documented. So Arturo set aside dreams of a profession and toiled as a messenger and clerk at the law firm that was seeking to protect Johnson & Johnson's use of the Red Cross logo on its products. From that case, Arturo indexed and memorized thousands of pages of testimony. His recall of detail extraordinary. So the book hunting bug caught him, and he began collecting books. He began what was for him a lifelong love affair with the book or with books. He fanned the pages of Frederick Douglass's narrative as if it was a breeze carried him to the riverfront plantation where sailboats first defined freedom for young Frederick. He read about Toussaint Louverture and the revolution of Haiti. He read about, who else? Who is this one here? Oh, he read about David Walker and his appeal to the colored citizens of the world. And then Arturo got married. He first married in 1895. The same year, he adopted the English version of his name, Arthur. Elizabeth Hatcher of Staunton, Virginia, was his bride. She died young, leaving her husband to raise two sons, Maximo Gomez and Kingsley Guaronay. A third, Arturo Alfonso Jr., died in infancy. His second wife was Elizabeth Morrow Taylor, also from Virginia. From their union came two more children, Reginald Stanfield and Nathaniel Jose. Both boys lived in Virginia with their half-brothers and their mother's mother. It was common then for parents who worked in cities to send their children out to be raised by kin. On visit to the South, Arturo bristled at the color line. When the second Elizabeth passed on, he married another Elizabeth, this time Elizabeth Green. They were blessed with three children, Fernando, Dolores Marie, and Placido Carlos. Despite their Spanish name, Schomburg wouldn't let his offspring learn his native tongue. They were Americans. Now, this is something that's true of a lot of immigrants. It depends on who they are, what time period they grew up in, etc. We had immigrants that lived right in our neighborhood in Sacramento, and it was amazing to me that they were from what's the name of that country? The Fiji. They were from Fiji. They were Fijians, but they were Indian by ethnicity, ethnically Indian, but they'd never been to India. But they spoke the Indian language. They practiced Indian culture. They cooked the Indian foods. They dealt with all the Indian holidays. Everything about them was Indian, but they had never, ever been to India. They grew up in Fiji. Their parents were from India. And so it all depends. It can go either way. And in this case, that's what he decided to do. In his quest for Black glory, Arturo Schomburg navigated a maze of misinformation that stripped Africans' humanity and branded them as less than to justify slavery. The system was based on skin color, superiority, and inferiority, and was necessary, argued aristocrats, to build fortunes and empires. I think we call that white superiority. Okay, so here you see there's a picture of, I will show you this picture here. You can see a picture here of the Three Musketeers, and you also see a picture of Alexander Dumas, who was born and raised in France. And Dumas was one of three Dumas that became extremely famous, so famous that each one of them has a statue at a major intersection in Paris to this day. Well, the one statue got destroyed by the Germans, but they still have a monument there for all three of them. So he discovered that Russia had its Black Star too. The great poet Alexander Pushkin, Beethoven. There's a lot of questions about his ethnicity, okay, especially when you listen to his Ninth Symphony. That's very suspect. I love the Beethoven's Ninth myself. Seafaring. Arturo Schomburg was becoming quite the collector. He nabbed 2 volumes by Paul Coffey, an early American whaler, shipbuilder, maritime trader, whose fleet sailed the United States Atlantic coast to the Caribbean and to Europe. He was the richest African American at one point. He also began learning about in Paul Kofi. Arturo found a forerunner to Marcus Garvey, and this book is really beautifully illustrated. Okay, beautifully illustrated. I love books with good illustrations in them. This one is particularly nice. I think I got this off of Amazon. Probably pretty sure about that. But he was a bloodhound. Okay, he did research. He investigated. He was a detective. Sherlock Holmes didn't have anything on Arturo Schomburg, because in the case of somebody who has committed a crime, they try to hide what they've done. They give excuses, etc. But in the case of the history of African Americans or African people in general, it's not just one person that's trying to hide the truth. It's a number of people that are trying to hide the truth. And so it requires a lot more digging and a lot more research. Busy, always busy, said Fernando of his father. Arturo Schomburg, he was gone, traveling on lecture tours or collecting missions for what seemed like 8 months each year. And when he was home in Brooklyn, he was out most evenings for club and lodge meetings. His visiting children lived among the countless books in his collection. His only daughter, Dolores, greeted artists and scholars who came by to view his growing library. Arturo's wife, Elizabeth, fought to carve out living space for the family, but that was a losing battle. Her efforts to clean his desk, also in vain. That sounds really familiar. I think I resemble that remark. When she cleared the clutter to dust, he complained that important references were misplaced. She finally left well enough alone. I think she got the message. Writer and researcher. Arturo Schomburg aimed to prove Africans' place in world history. Here's another picture of Chevalier de Saint George, who was the most famous. He was the most skilled horseback rider, swimmer, swordsman, violinist, and lover in all of France. Back in his day, that was in the 1700s, 1772. So you can see our history goes back far in a number of places. Rumor has it that Schomburg's wife put her foot down finally. Either his books or their family must go. Only a threat like that could make him part with his prizes. There were bookshelves filled with books all over the house. A family member said, even in the bathroom. The books were carefully cataloged, inventoried in Arturo's head, and arranged by size and color of binding. But Arturo's library had outgrown private hands. He had turned down a very handsome offer because the collection deserved a wider audience. Arturo had already lent items to libraries and staged exhibitions for schools and community groups. He approached the New York Public Library, but it lacked funds to purchase his vast holdings. So the Carnegie Corporation bought the entire lot for $10,000 and in 1926 donated it to the library. And that's how he ended up moving his books from out of the house into a facility where they could properly be cataloged, inventoried, and lent, not necessarily lent out. His library is a research library. So you go there and you can read and you can learn and you can make copies of things. You can do some things while you're there, but you don't take anything out of the Schomburg. Not that I know of. I've never taken anything out of the Schomburg. Every time I've been there, it's a research library. So you can't even go to the shelves to pick out the books. The books are held in a secure facility. You can write out the call number and they will bring the book down to you. And then you get to look at it and then you bring it back. So it's like going to a library and you check out the book, but you can't take it past the door. Okay. Basically everything stays in there. It's like Las Vegas. Everything that happens, everything you get to look at the Schomburg stays at the Schomburg. So Arturo went on to do many other things, including teaching as well. He was an expert on our history and recognized all over the world, even by many people, among them people such as Langston Hughes and Countee Cullen and all kinds of famous African-American writers and authors, etc. In 1938, if this proverb, a book is like a garden carried in a pocket, is true, then Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, the historian and book collector, had a green thumb and a harvest of pride. There was no field of human endeavor that he did not till with his determined hand, that he did not sow with seeds of curiosity, where he did not weed out lies and half truths, for that he did not water with a growing sense of African awareness, or that he did not water with a growing sense of African awareness and heritage. If a book is a garden carried in a pocket, then Schomburg yielded a bumper crop, blanketed Mount Kilimanjaro with African violets. And here is a really nice picture of Arturo Schomburg. I think the author nailed. I think he really captured the essence of Arturo Schomburg with that particular drawing. And the illustrator is Eric Velasquez. So kudos to Eric. Did a great job with the artwork. Excellent story. We need more stories like this. If you like to hear more stories like this, keep tuning in right here. We're doing it live on Facebook. We're also doing it live on YouTube, and we'll be posting we'll be doing watch parties as well. Watch party for Schomburg, the man who built the library, will be tomorrow night at 9 p.m. That's April the 2nd, 9 p.m. Tune in with the grin from your ear to your chin. We promise you're going to win. You can check it out then. Make sure to share this story with your family, your friends, and your children. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's a button right below that says subscribe. Subscribe so you be aware when we come out with new videos. Okay, some of them will be on Facebook. Well, everything will be on Facebook eventually. All of them may not get watch parties, but everything will be on Facebook. All right, so peace out. Without a doubt, do your thing. We hope that everybody here can sing. We're going to do this again one more time tomorrow night with a brand new rhyme. Peace out now.